We are going to tell a story about failure, not a failure of engineering, but a failure of imagination, a failure to understand the fundamental chaotic laws of the universe, or at least the laws of the feline universe. In the early 1960s, the Cold War was a game of inches. The US intelligence community was phenomenal at tapping embassy phones and bugging lamp fixtures, but the Soviet KGB had become smart. They started holding their most sensitive conversations outdoors, on park benches and diplomatic gardens away from walls that could hide a wiretap. This created a massive, immediate need for mobile, self propelled, and entirely inconspicuous listening devices. The CIA's Directory of Science and Technology, the same brilliant minds who were pioneering satellite reconnaissance, decided to wage their own tiny, absurd war on the front lines of zoology. They launched Project Acoustic Kitty. The budget over 5 years soared to an estimated 20 million in today's money. The goal was simple: turn a cat into a cyborg spy. The execution was anything but. To be clear, the engineering achievement alone was breathtaking for the 1960s. This was years before the microchip revolution. The CIA assigned two top engineers and surgeons to the task. They needed to take a microphone, a transmitter, a battery, and an antenna and shrink it down in size so that it could be implanted into a living, functioning creature without causing noticeable behavioral changes or tissue rejection. Let's look at the technical requirements of this early biohybrid warfare. Miniaturization. The electronics had to be small enough to fit inside the base of the cat's skull and chest cavity. This involved pioneering work and solid state circuitry as well as battery life. The microphone placement. The microphone was surgically implanted deep inside the cat's outer ear canal. This was strategic. The cat's pinna, the external ear, is designed to funnel sound, making it a natural audio collection dish. The power problem. The battery was a nightmare. It had to be powerful enough to transmit a clear signal across the city street, but small enough to fit inside the cat's chest cavity without interfering with its organs. The team constantly struggled with biocompatibility and the longevity of the power source. This wasn't some mad scientist project. This was a dedicated, heavily funded division pushing the absolute limits of material science and surgical technique. They succeeded in building the hardware. The first major technical flaw, however, was inherent to biology. When you implant a microphone in a warm, fleshy body, you get internal soundscape. The microphone was perpetually overwhelmed by the rhythmic, deafening noise of the cat's hearts, lungs, and most crucially, the deep internal rumble of hunger and the cat's infamous purr. The final memo confirms that extensive efforts were made to design filtering systems to mute the organic noise, but they were never fully successful. The engineers solved the hardware problem. The psychologists solved nothing. The CIA's Behavioral Science Division spent years trying to train the cats to follow basic espionage protocols. This was a fundamental clash between operant conditioning and feline autonomy. The handler's attempts to train the cat to walk a specific route, sit motionless for long periods near the targeted area, and ignore distractions was near impossible. The reward system, food and affection, proved entirely inadequate against the cat's own decision to do anything it wanted to do as an apex predator. The cat's internal mission priorities were as follows: 1. Chasing a fly. 2. Taking a nap in the sun. 3. Investigating that interesting piece of dust. And 4. Returning to the surveillance target. Maybe, if the cat's mood dictated it. One former handler recounted the frustration. The cat would faithfully follow its training route for days, only to deviate wildly at the sight of a stray rodent or worse, another cat. They couldn't design a code for jealousy or prey drive. To try and mitigate the hunger distraction, which caused loud stomach rumbles, some reports suggest the scientists attempted procedures to modify the cat's sense of hunger. They were literally trying to surgically hack the cat's motivation to make it prioritize national security over a sardine. The reality was simple. The mission profile demanded a remote-controlled drone. They had a remote, uncontrolled organic life form instead. By 1966, the project was deemed technically complete enough for a field test in a live environment. The location, a park in Washington, D.C., near the Soviet compound. The setup was classic Cold War suspense. Two Soviet officials are chatting softly on a bench across the street, hidden inside a surveillance van packed with reel-to-reel recorders and radio equipment. The CIA team holds its breath. The Acoustic Kitty, the culmination of millions of dollars and half a decade of surgical science, is gently released. Its antenna tail is rigged to transmit. The cat took a few tentative steps towards the targets. The CIA team held its breath, ready for the first golden nugget of intercepted intel, and then the moment of truth. And the most famous, if not humorous account from former CIA officer Victor Marchetti, the cat immediately darted into the street and was run over by a passing taxi. No joke. You can't make this up. The mission was terminated by a Ford Fairline. The only signal to the CIA received was the sound of the fender crunching expensive classified hardware. While some official accounts later denied the taxi story, claiming the cat was simply decommissioned after the test, the outcome was identical. The cat proved too unreliable, too easily distracted, and its behavior impossible to predict or command under pressure. The failure of Project Acoustic Kitty was formalized on March 1967 in the final closing memo. Look at the dry, unfeeling language of CIA RDP 86B00243R005001200002-3. It doesn't mention the taxi or the money. It only discusses utility. Quote, our final examination of trained cats convinced us that the program would not lend itself in a practical sense to our highly specialized needs, end quote. In other words, the technology was cool, but the spy was useless. The memo concluded that the environmental factors like the proximity of dogs, bugs, or other cats and the difficulty of control made the project a non-starter. The CIA later acknowledged the failure, stating that the millions we spent because we were under pressure to do things and not to leave any stone unturned. The cat was either salvaged for parts or decommissioned, but its legacy remains a monument to the lengths the CIA would go and the fundamental limits of high-tech espionage when faced with animal nature. We have investigated the comical failure of turning a cat into a spy. Next time we're moving from the absurdly small to the absurdly large. We are sticking with the CIA's attempt to weaponize the animal kingdom, but this time the animals are marine animals, and the goals are sabotage and assassination. We are going to look at Project Oxygas and the CIA's plan to weaponize dolphins to place limpet mines and sink Soviet vessels. We will be looking at declassified Navy reports and documents that confirm the extensive training of marine mammals for black ops in the 1960s. We'll detail the protocols for training Flipper to be a saboteur. If you want to know how the CIA tried to train dolphins for war, hit the subscribe button. The link to the full Acoustic Kitty memo is in the description. Just be sure to watch out for traffic. I'll see you in the archives.